Thank you very much for this invitation. As I wrote in a small post, I'm hoping to share with you some of the experience, of our experience in Madrid as part of the municipalist movement, but also a part of let's say, an intention of apply the framework of the commons into different fields, one of them the institutional politics, but also to put some ideas or some concepts that I've been thinking and that are helping me to try to understand what is going on. I mean, what is happening and what we are doing also in this extraordinary, I think, situation that we are living in Spain. This tote bag was one of the, let's say, rewards of the crowdfunding campaign of a book that was called The Big Book, El Libraco. And El Libraco was a publication that gathered the incredible campaigns, graphic campaigns, but in general there were different media. There were also videos and even songs produced during the local elections, especially around the figure of Ada Colau in Barcelona and Manuela Carmena in Madrid. This tote says, I won the elections and so did you. Ask me how. And the book is not only a colorful, let's say, gathering of graphic works. Some of them are very well-known graphic designers, as for example Mariscal in Barcelona, but also with some texts that are trying to explain how this happened, how these self-organized collectives that were called El Movimiento de Liberación Gráfica de Barcelona, so the graphic liberation movement in Barcelona and in Madrid, and another group called Madrid with Manuela, actually sparked this campaign that was really and truly done by the people. I mean, I was part of the electoral committee in the city of Madrid, and this was not anything that we control. Here. So the real title of the book was, at the end, we won the elections. And that's how we did it. No? So it tries to, as I say, explain this process. And I brought this image. One of the posters that was produced was, if we have the power to imagine another Barcelona, we have the power to transform it. And I think this is very, very fitting the title of these cycles of talks, like how are we able to imagine another city? The campaigns in the municipalist movement were very much focused on the power of the people and the capacity of citizens to actually transform the situations that they are living. And assuring and reassuring and putting the conditions so that this could happen. This comes from a sense of, let's say, limit of a glass ceiling, not really made of glass, but made of quite solid concrete, of what the social movements could achieve after the May 15 in Spain. And the realization that this idea that we used to have, that if you have a social movement and you write a very coherent proposal that has social support and that is feasible, and then you show that this is something that a broad part of the population is in favor, the government has to do something. But that is not true anymore. And we lived through this process from 2011 with the May 15 and the camps in Spain until where this proposal started around 2014, we saw incredible mobilizations that were not able to move the position of the government in the direction of the cuts and the implementation of the austerity measures, from the change of the constitution that was implemented by the Socialist Party to a quite harsh law on freedom of expression and they say the kind of political action in the street that was passed by the conservative government. So these two images go on these lines, no? That we are the 99% against the 1%. So this municipalist proposal is taking over many of the ideas of the demand for democratization, but also many of the ideas of what is this we that is demanding more democracy that started also in the squares. And also we have more power than what we have been made to believe. And that is also like, still is a mantra and one of the main features of this government. And I will try also to explain how it has been played in relation with institutional and institutional action. So these are two posters by Guanyem Barcelona. And the story, I assume you are more or less familiar with the municipalist story, but to make it very, very short, in the elections of May in 2015, dozens of municipalist platforms presented in the whole of Spain, and got the government in major cities like Madrid, Barcelona, A Coruña, Santiago, and Zaragoza are actually governed by municipalist platforms, where in Valencia, Oviedo, well, Cádiz as well, and then Valencia, Oviedo, in Pamplona, just to speak about the major cities, they were part of coalitions, and they were also part of the government. So basically, it's not something that is happening in one city or two cities or three cities, it's something that happened all across the country. The situation in Madrid was a very bit peculiar because, well, Madrid is one of these territories, it's not the only one, but Madrid was actually governed by 25 years of the Conservative Party, uninterrupted, and with a very strong neoliberal twist some 10 years ago. And this process, if you want to check, I brought a text in Red Pepper magazine, so it's in English, trying to explain how a bunch of squatters and booksellers organized a platform that actually won the city of Madrid with exactly 1/10 of the budget that the Conservative Party was investing in this campaign. And as the Tote said before, we didn't do it. I mean, we all did it. And it is, I think, very, very important to take into account one concept that was emerging during this process of we want to present to the elections. Do you think, guys, that we should present to the elections? How are we going to do it? And especially in Madrid, it played a very important role because these movements are the people that we proposed first, that we wanted to explore the idea of going to the elections. And the Observatorio Metropolitano actually published a book called The Municipalist Wager, the Municipalist Bet, and that was published the day after the European elections, where Podemos got, by surprise, 5 seats, if I remember right, in the European Parliament, out of nowhere. A new party that was 5 months old. And we were, what happened in Madrid is that Podemos didn't really have the capacity to present in the local elections by then. They didn't have the organization, but in Madrid they had a strong organization. And Madrid has, as I said before, a very peculiar role because in a centralist country as Spain, it has a state scale by default. And Podemos is a party that is interested in the state. So it has a certain kind of attractive for them to present there. So there was a moment where there were these two, let's say, groups. On the one hand, Ganemos Madrid, Let's Win Madrid, that were a conglomerate of people from social movements on individual basis, and then some parties of the left and some small parties and the Ecologist Party. And on the other hand, there was Podemos, Madrid as well, saying that maybe we go alone. No? Maybe we are strong enough to present to the elections and there is no need to make a municipalist, let's say, proposal there. And there was this idea of the confluence. There was the idea that we go together, we want to do this, but we want to do it together, and together means everybody, and everybody means the 99%, and this means like, no, like we have to get to an agreement because we have different modes of organization and then maybe different points of view of how the city should be or how the politics of the city develop, but you need everybody to do this thing. You need everybody to just get the Conservative Party out of Madrid after 25 years when they were just winning, you know, one election after another with an absolute majority that allowed them to do whatever without having to negotiate with anybody. So for us, this was a force to which we were listening and that was outside us. It was like a demand out there that actually made us shift and made us, put us in a position that was not maybe what we would prefer and was not what Podemos would have preferred, but this is what we, let's say, had to achieve in order to be able to also, for Podemos and for us to be politically operational, no? in the future. So if we go back to even before the May 15, when we say that we didn't do it, I'm not talking also about the specific campaign and the construction of this idea of the conference, but the whole process, because I think that sometimes it's very easy to think that there has been some kind of linear process that first happened this, and then happened that, and then you had the PAN, then you have the May 15, and then of course then you present to the elections, and then well, you win if that is, you know. But the process is not that linear, and the process has had very different ups and downs, where many times the May 15 was dead, and there was nothing over, and you know, these guys are winning again, and many times before also there were explosions of creativity and explosions of very interesting political processes that then accounted to coming back to a situation where one of the main two parties were ruling exactly in the same way that they were doing before. But we also have this memory of the things that happened and the recognition that what happens doesn't unhappen. It's somehow impossible to not having left some of these processes that we were through. Ada Colau, the mayor in Barcelona, still says we have to have 1 foot in the institutions and 1,000 feet outside. And she comes from this specific social movement. This is the platform against evictions in Barcelona. And it's totally by chance that today, I think at 8:30 in a magazine, they are screening this film called Alcaldesa. And Alcaldesa follows Pau is the director of the film, is part of the video crew of the PA, of the Plataforma Afectados por la Hipoteca, and they follow the elections. And then you can follow the process and the discussions and some of the actions, but also the transformation of Ada Colau, who was an activist, grassroots activist, and how is this transformation into the mayor of the second city in Madrid. No? And what we have, what I think is one of the characteristics also of the movement, and one of the things that allows to organize this municipalist process, is the capacity also to identify where are the struggles in places where maybe it's not where you look usually. And I was also commenting this in a meeting yesterday, no? That I think very often of this discussion that we had once with Silvia Federici in Barcelona, and Silvia was talking about the campaign of wages for housework, and then someone was asking her about the basic income. As to say, okay, it's good that in the 70s you made a partial demand, which is wages for housework, but now we are in 2000 whatever, so we should have the full thing, we should have the basic income. And what Silvia was saying is, well, it's true that basic income is a good demand, but somehow it's a demand that is not working in the same way that wages for housework work. Wages for housework were put in a demand that made people realize what is the relation between the wage and the unwaged labor, and politicize all these women around a new understanding of what was the processes that they were living. Basic income doesn't help to do that. Actually, the call for a basic income veils these relations between wage and unwage and production and reproduction for good reasons, and there is not, it's not to say it's a bad argument, it's to say it's not the same discussion and it's not the same political process. So we cannot see something, basic income as an upgrade of wages for housework, because this belong to two different things. What the PA actually made was to take a very specific problem, but it was a problem of the people that were evicted, and link it to the process of the real estate bubble, the financialization of economy, and then after the crisis, of course, the crisis and the consequences of the crisis. So it is a kind of specific struggle that in Spain, in that moment, helped to politicize people, helped to explain that one of also of the slogans of the May 15, that was that this was not a crisis, it was a plundering. So how does this plundering work in the factuality, in the lives of people? And on the other hand, what also managed to produce was a political agent that was a very unusual political agent, because we're mostly migrant workers, because those were the last ones to actually have access in the housing bubble, so there was the worst off, and also they were the ones that had less networks of support, so they were in the worst position, but also because they were somehow more prepared to fight and more prepared to make those demands and those direct actions that actually the anti-eviction movement demanded. But then again, when the anti-eviction movement made this demand to the parliament to change the law for technical reasons, but there was this almost 85% approval in the white society towards this demand. So they effectively changed a position of shame, where people didn't want to say that they were evicted, they didn't want to say that they couldn't pay their mortgages, into a political reivindication in a way that was super, super powerful. We have this, this outside, let's say, and this process, then we win the elections. We all win the elections. And fast forward 3 years later, then yesterday we launched this website. It's called El Atlas del Cambio, the Atlas of Change. And this is a website where the people, the organizations in the government, but also in the opposition, trying to push forward the municipalist program from the opposition, and in certain municipalities where their support is vital. Because the situation now also is that there are no absolute majorities in most of the cities in Spain, so you have to get agreements and in order to govern and to pass things in the plenary. And this Atlas del Cambio are gathering 75 public policies in 18 different municipalities in Spain that are organized around these 9 categories, which is redistribution, right to the city, feminism, commons, social rights, urban ecology, habitat economy, and I don't know, good government. But buen gobierno is a concept that comes also from Latin America, so it's not managerial, it's something a little bit more, let's say, philosophical. And well, they are organized with this very cool signs done by a very good graphic designer in Barcelona. But basically are like, it lists these different policies and explains, you will see there. But also what we try to do is to, well, this is what you get a description of what is this policy and how that it works, but also we made an effort to put the links to actually the proper documents, not only, so the information that you give to the people that are interested on this theme, or the people that are affected by this problem, so that will mean a website or whatever mean, also the inner document, the administration document that approves this plan, and this takes different shapes. It could be a bylaw, an ordinance, and well, different administrative documents, basically, but also very wide, broad, like videos and maybe news in newspapers, and a way to actually navigate the whole web. What happens with these policies is when you read 3 or 4 of them, well, they're interested, but they're basically nothing that any socialist, social democratic party in Sweden wouldn't do. So they are good policies, so good social policies. It's not a Soviet implementation. When you read 11 of them, it starts to be a little bit like, okay, yeah, well, whatever. Oh, they're social, right, yes, I got it. But when you read 75, and when you read the news of these 75 policies, then it starts an image of something else. Let's start an image of what is the direction of this. What actually is the logic? What is the city, the municipal city that these different policies are building in those different territories? So we ended up with these 5 axes of how is this. The idea is all these different actions are kind of drawing like teselas, like pieces in a mosaic, a wider picture of what is the city that we want. And the city that we want that would have, you know, like the this environmental air pollution, but also measures related with climate change in Madrid, and then this other basic municipal small attempt of basic income that is happening in La Coruña, but then also this amazing process where a very specific demand around street is happening in Oviedo. And all these will then draw this new city, which is the municipal city that we are building, now also all around across Spain, which is democratic, livable, and fearless, that collaborates and cares. And around this axis are also, you can filter the different actions and then see what are the ones that we think could represent that. Is not, let's say, a very exhaustive description, but it's more like what you could see, or what are the elements that could make these different layers of the municipal city. And at the same time, there is a map with 35 municipalist platforms that presented to the elections that, again, is not exhaustive. There are more than this, but this is a good, you know, let's say, portion or test that shows what's going on, and there is a certain kind of characteristics. And the atlas, this subtitle is the political geography of the municipalist change. And it makes sense that you have the public policies and you have the organizations, because, as I said before, it's not really that the policy defines what is going on, because the specific policy is something that happens in a specific territory. It's difficult to understand what is possible and what is not possible in each of these territories, and it's also very interesting to see what are the actions and the specific projects that actually relate to the sense of reivindication, with the sense of plundering, with the sense of having control of your life, which is different in each case, absolutely. But this is, like, as I say, like this point on this wider line, and this wider line is somehow pushed by these organizations. So what we are saying, and this is more or less also our concept of the municipalism, that the municipalism is not a list of good public policies done by progressive governments, and it's not what the movements do and they have to keep on doing in their autonomous space. It's when you produce something where these two logics merge and change, because they have to change if they really want not to go on two planes, and also to try to avoid this kind of dynamics, which is the dynamics also in which we found the social movements when you get into office, which is that a relation of demands and let's say, exchange of services and resources in a way that you just change it from one place to another. We are trying to build something that is not here and not there, and that actually modifies the two agents, no? The institution and the social movements. Okay, this is this one. So, as part of the Observatorio Metropolitano, we were, well, this was a militant research group that was funded in 2005, and since then we wrote a number of books, but we also made a lot of seminars and workshops. And this is one of the workshops that we were doing in Museo Reina Sofia, and it was called From the Crisis to Democracy, and it was just before the elections, the local elections, and then I proposed to do this glossary about what are the terms that we think are the key terms, again, not that these kind of lines that are going to make this passage from the crisis to the democracy. And then I made a mistake, actually, because everybody was proposing different terms, and then you have, I don't know, but, let's say, social struggle, and then you have municipalism, and then you have democracy. You have all these, you know, like strong names. And then there is this guy, Italian architect, and then said, no, I think that tensegrity is a key concept. And I was like, okay, here comes like, no, architects with their structures, and then he comes with this picture. What the hell? I mean, no, guy, I mean, get yourself together. If we want, we're going to put it in ecology, but there's no way that, you know, like we have all this set of concepts and lines, and then suddenly comes here with a structure. I mean, what the hell it is? I don't know if you know, but this is more or less how tensegrid works. More and more in the last years, thinking what has happened to ourselves, and what happens when you get actually into institutional space, or you try to operate there, and what is the logic, and what happens with the social movements, and how we were there, and what are the logics, like the inner logics of that. I got to this idea that social movements, and this is also again a strategy that's put on the table and a demand that we put to ourselves, kind of works by accumulation. You talk about accumulation of forces, and it's building a structure that works very good on compression. It works, you know, when the Tutte Bianche were doing this structure of the, I think it's here, of the turtle, no? And you are in the social centers that are under attack, and then you get together, and then you get solid, and then you accumulate forces around different things. But what happens is that we are living a new moment where it's not, this is not possible. We were not anymore together under a threat and having to, you know, to get forced by accumulation, but we were totally apart. We were sent to different places, doing different things, and then suddenly the way of organization changes completely. And the structure and the structure of organization that we need is much closer to a tensegrity than to this, you know, solidity of the social movement. And I think that there are like different also logics that play in this way of understanding politics of one way or on the other. One of them also is that thinking, for example, that politics is not a game which is a sum-zero game, and this is what many times, and we have seen this with Podemos lately, this kind of rationale, where you say, no, I have to move to this concept, this is the way where I win the votes that are over there. It's like there is this certain pool of votes or of political power, and then you have to accumulate them. You have to win more votes, you have to make your position more clear and more strong, and you have to hold the castle in order to win power. But we are in a situation, in general, where the power is not built like this. And we need a different strategy to operate in that logic. And this different strategy has to do, in my opinion, with what I said before, of what are the resonances and what is our capacity to read what is happening outside and to be almost like a catalyst, you know, to be able of propose things that are resonating with something that is much wider than us. and that is going on another directions. And technopolitics and the uses of social media and the way Twitter in particular is used in Spain works very much in this logic. It allows, and we have done a number of campaigns and all the time, to have decentralized positions, which actually is much more effective in the net, and to have different kinds of interconnections between these that actually create areas of density and not, let's say, you know, this idea of the accumulation. These are the graphs done by two different people. They are also part of this book, and one is, as you see, in Barcelona en Común, and well, it's interesting because Gabriel Rufián is from the Independentistas, and you see that there are like two spheres that almost don't touch each other, and the other one is like the interactions of Madrid con Manuela, which was this group supporting with Ahora Madrid, and also the account of Manuela Carmena, which was actually administrated by one of the community managers of the Acampada in Sol, which is, I always find that is a very interesting twist of the politics. But that is also how actually worked the May 15, that was working by proliferation and not by accumulation. And that, as I said, to many different things. This is also a graphic of the projects that people felt that were actually related with the May 15, like offsprings, and that also is the reason why every time that someone said that the May 15 is dead, then we will say, okay, maybe there are not camps, but it doesn't mean anything. In the actual situation, I think that the movement that I have seen, or we have seen recently closer to the May 15, has been, for example, the 8th of March in Spain at least, and the feminist movement has actually been able to gather a very similar kind of energy. Then again, the camps, and here I think that one of these catalyzers were the hackers and the way that the hacker culture could very well understand this logic and then created, this is a map of the camps, but also there were like a block that had sub-blocks so that everybody could have their own space, but everybody could relate their own space to other spaces so that you have autonomy, but you also have coordination at the same time, and you are able to navigate across all these different spaces and also relate them one to the other. As I said, these camps, I think the one in Madrid was one of the one that lasted most, and it lasted 6 weeks. Some of them were much shorter. But the territories have a memory también also. And this is a map done by Arnau Monteverde, and it's a map of in all the municipalities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. You have, I don't remember which is which because I'm a little bit of an idiot and I erased the legend, but I would say the red is the places, or the other way around. The yellow is the places where there were May 15, there were camps in the May 15. The red is the places where there was a municipalist platform, and the green is the places where the municipalist platform actually is in the government. And you see there is not a single place with a municipalist platform that didn't have a May 15 camp, and there is almost no May 15 camp without a municipalist platform. So this is more or less how this worked. Just to speak also a little bit about this Observatorio Metropolitano and the kind of work that we did, and I think this is another of the characteristics of the social movements in Spain that made it what it is now. One of them is this capacity of identifying and listening to the outside. The second one will be the work in a network, and the third one is transversality. So the capacity of different agents to operate in different fields, and to this connectors, like in the Tensegrite, no? Like they go from one point to the other. And this is a little bit of the map of the devices of the Observatorio Metropolitano, would be this OOMM, that is these people. So basically the names were us. And then the relation with this Foundation of the Commons that had different nodes in other parts of the territory. But then for more than a year, we ran a blog called Madrilonia. So some other people here were part of the Madrilonia constellation. And these people part of these people were part of a local constellation, which is the social economy in Madrid, and also around different kind of cooperatives as well. So this would be from our collective to the territory of Madrid, to the territory of the state, and where are the agents and how are the figures. But these figures were not only, let's say, going thematically in the social movements, but also we had a lot of comrades that were doing PhDs, working in the academia, and being part of the social movements at the same time, but also doing cultural production. So you could have someone who was finishing a PhD, doing a seminar in the Reina Sofia, and then being in a squatted social center, like in a continuous in their life. Not everybody did this, but I think that this is one of these key features of the Spanish movement. Then I had to go here as the last one, because I messed it. And to speak about one of the other lines, and this is what I'm busy now, so it relates very much to the work that I was also doing in with the Observatorio Metropolitano, and that I'm going to develop in the next 4 years, which is the work on commons. This is an image of the chart Magna Carta, the British document that set up the habeas corpus and the political liberties. And there I'm very fond of this idea of Peter Linebaugh, which is a historian of British origin, but living in the UK, in the States, and where he was part of the Midnight Notes collective, together with Silvia Federici and George Cafensis, among others. And Peter Linebaugh, in his book, The Magna Carta Manifesto, follows the, let's say, adventures and misadventures of the Carta Magna and the principles of the Carta Magna from its inception in the 13th century until nowadays, but also of the Chart of the Forest. Because 2 years later than the barons signed the agreement with the king about what are the political freedoms and the political rights, there was this chart that actually the king signed at the same time and kept on signing, the two of them in different moments, that was the right of the commoners to have access to the commons of the forest that were property of the king. So the king had the property of the forest, but the commoners have the right to gather wood, to cross it, to build charts, to, he quotes the stovers of the widows. So we have been working also with the Observatorio Metropolitano. We published in 2010 the Chart of the Commons of the City of Madrid, that was before the May 15 and the camps, where we actually presented this idea that in the transformation of the plundering of the city from the big extensions of the financial market and the housing bubble to the privatization of public services and of the city center that we preview was going to happen, the idea of the commons will help to, again, identify common threads and to create this common ground of different struggles that seemed unconnected if you look them, one by one. And this, I have to say that people actually took it with a little bit of, let's say, incredulity at the beginning. Even our comrades from the social centers were thinking that that was a little bit crazy. But taking it as a theoretical frame and taking it as a way to somehow develop lines of governmentality, like why, under which terms are we going to produce these codes and these regulations for ourselves in autonomous institutions, but also in the public institutions, for me, is still one of these important threads that connect all this. And I think that it's not by chance that the first book that we actually wrote collectively, that we set up, thought, and wrote collectively, was the Chart of the Commons of the City of Madrid, and the last one that we wrote collectively as well was La Apuesta Municipalista. For me, there is like a thread of all this, between these two concepts. So, to make a summary, and also I think this has been part of the work of the Observatorio Metropolitano, and what I hope to keep on doing is also to make this iteration where there is not this separation between theory and practice, but we are looking at the practice that informs the theory, that makes a proposal, that then informs the practice, then you see how it can or cannot operate in the things that you want to do, and then again informs the theory that goes in these ways in a very, let's say, organic way. So to point out these three concepts that I think for me could help the discussion as well about what is happening and what we do with what is happening in the world. One will be the concept of the craftsmanship of the context, and this is also very obvious when you see the atlas. It is difficult to define change if you don't put yourself in each of these territories, and in each of these themes, in each of the territory, change is a gradient from what it was before and after, and it's not something that then we could say in political terms neither. We have this grid, we put it over reality, and then we chop everything that it goes here, and we just disregard everything that it goes there, and this is what is good. And I think this is not a very good approach, and this is one of the beauties as well of the municipalist movement now, is that each platform is in each territory with a different combination of power, with a different combination of agents, and they operate on that basis and not on the basis of a national structure that actually takes decisions in this overall simplification of reality. This also has to accept, like they say, the organicity of the bodies that are in those territories. And here I really like this idea of Raquel Gutierrez, which is a sociologist, a Mexican sociologist that worked for a long time in Bolivia. She actually was married to Garcia Linera, famously a vice president of Bolivia. She was in Cochabamba in the water wars. And in this book, fantastic book, is translated into English, it's called The Rhythms of the Pachacuti, where Raquel is looking at the movements in Cochabamba around the water, but also in La Paz. She also develops this idea of the movement as an organic thing that has, like the heart, it has moments of expansion and moments of contraction. And she also puts forward this idea that you cannot measure the success or the strength of a movement by what they have achieved, but of what is the horizon of the struggle. So that there are moments and positions that you might not have achieved a lot, but if your horizon is still, looking at this other place, then you are still good. But if you achieve maybe even more, but you say, hey, this is it, that's it, we stop it, there is no more horizon, then the movement is not that strong anymore. So in relation with the social movements, I think that, and in relation with us as social movement doing a very weird thing in the institutions, I think that this is very important. Then specifically in relation with the municipalism is this, the politics of the in-between. And the politics of the in-between is not only the construction of this other space where the institutions and the social meets, it's also the rejection of a binary logic that goes through all kinds of scales and developments of the institutional politics, from the procedures of an administration that is unable to recognize any kind of gray situations. Either you have the 15 papers that the administration said that you have to present, or you don't have the 15 papers. There is not a way that I almost have everything. You know how bureaucracy works. It's yes or no. There is not this middle ground. But there is also, and I have been seeing it lately, a construction of the position of the friend-enemy, which is basically an old politics, not only of the 20th century, but of the 19th century, which is totally, I think, functional to this binary that is not not productive anyway. This also construction of these places of the in-between goes in a different direction than when others said that we have to have 1 foot in the institution and then 1,000 feet outside, because first of all, we might not be so many. I'm sorry to say this, but if right now, for example, Madrid, we have 200 people in the institution in different positions, we might have no 200,000 people outside there. I think that it's not a question of quantitative. It might even be more interesting to create this middle space and this intermediate space more than trying to compensate one kind of dynamics and density with numbers somewhere else. And just to finish, and in relation with the commons, and this was also based on our experience in different discussions that we had in a certain moment, then we called for this, let's do a seminar on the urban commons. We gathered a bunch of people, most of them we didn't know, they came from all kinds of fields, people that are interested in working on this thing. Let's get together, let's decide here and now what are the urban commons in the city of Madrid. And the answer was a little bit depressing, because if we take our own definition of the commons that are based in these principles of having a community that manage a resource, self-manage a resource, so the community, the management, and the resource, and 4 principles, which is democracy, universality, sustainability, and inalienability, it turned out that actually there were no urban commons in the whole city, which went a little bit against our kind of my favorite political hypothesis, and I don't like when these things happen. The reflection that I got out of that is that, again, it's not useful to try to define something and then go and check if the reality is basically what your concept says that this thing should be. So an ontology of the process will be that it is not the commons of this thing that we might or might not call commons, and we can discuss forever what are these characteristics, but actually what is producing commons, I mean, what is producing communities, what is producing new collective resources, what is producing new ways to manage those collective resources. No? And then again, the commons will draw this line of governmentality that inform both the narrative and the normative. And these lines of governmentality, for me, when we come at this structure of the commons, have to get a battle with the dynamics of the state that we are living, and that is based on hierarchical knowledge and this idea of the representation and the transformation of any kind of multitude into one decision or one vote or one person. Also, an incapacity to deal with the complexity and the overlapping, so this segmentatory nature of the procedures. And as I said, this binary logic of being inside or outside, or yes or no, or 15 papers or no papers. And to me, now, one of this last projects that I was doing in Madrid was with people from law and public workers and people also interested on social action about what could be this law of the commons, so how are we going to codify it and give in certain institutional structures to the commons, and then what are those lines, again, those vectors that are dragging out of this Leviathanitic, hierarchical, segmentatory, binary system into something else. This something else, and then we could then go back to imagining another city. These, for me, are the lines that allow us to imagine what this other city might be, but also what are the logics, not what is the shape, and not what is the what, but basically what is the how of the logics that are producing these other territories. And I would like to just actually give this question to you. Thank you very much.
So you started off the talk, I think, with a diagnosis of the problem, which is that we live in democracies which aren't democratic. But essentially there's something that's broken in the link between the systems of government and the people that are supposed to be part of and supporting them. In your case, what you've been talking about is different strategies for changing that relationship. So having one foot inside the institution, 1,000 feet outside, getting over this binary idea and looking for the spaces in between. But the reality is that in practice what that meant was entering government and then having to struggle with the compromises that requires fundamentally. And it strikes me there's a real tension there between the populist aspect of the municipalized platform and the need for a professional political class in a complicated or complex democratic state. And I wondered, it doesn't sound as if those strategies that you suggest actually address that fundamental tension, because in the end, the professional political class takes on its own characteristics. It co-opts the populist movement. It has to make compromises. And for me, the real question is can we transform the institutions so that the political class that gets produced isn't the same type of political class that we have now? So I wonder if you have any thoughts about, in your context, in the Spanish context, what's the process of transforming not the relations with the institutions themselves?
Well, I am going, I don't know if Bourdieu or Foucault here is like the institutions are the relations. The institutions, it's the relations that build the institutions. And the norms, I would say. There is a certain kind of codes and norms that the institutions follow. Some of them are written and some are unwritten, and then this perpetuates the institution and then everybody. So I think here there are two problems, and I don't know if you are addressing the two of them. One is that the state is performatic, power is performatic, and in order to be able to get, okay, three problems. Being in the government doesn't mean that you have the power. And this everybody was telling us, and it's like, guys, we have been looking at Latin America and the governments in Latin America for years, and they have been saying this for years, we know. So the theory is there, we know. In order to transform government in power, you have to adopt some kind of these performatic characteristics. And then, but the problem there is that you have, again, to be able to identify how much in this vector you can diverge from the performance of the institution and to behave like the institution demands you to behave, in order that still you have credibility and you still operate as a government, because you have to be credible as a government. And this is a tension. So when you say you have to make compromises, this is one of the compromises. There is not one, there are many compromises. You have to do another compromise, which is how much you are going, or in which fields, or how, but basically how you are going to address the conflict with real power. And on the performances, I have two examples, and one is not so good and the other one is a little bit two of them are a little bit of a failure, but the two of them have something interesting with. So in terms of the performance, I entered the government with, we have a collective, it's called Madrid 129, and we have 3 city councillors. 3 of our committees got into the city council. One of them was appointed city councillor for culture, and I was the advisor on strategic planning for her for 2 years. So when we enter, she comes from Social Center El Patio, we come from the Commons, so we enter in culture and we say, hey, culture of commons, let's try to change things. In the middle, we got all kind of responsibilities, buildings, structures, you know, governance, professionals, whatever. And we found ourselves in the biggest cultural war ever. And the first one was that in this parade that you organize in Christmas, in Madrid in the 6th of January, there are these 3 figures that are the 3, it's called Reyes Magos, the magic kings, and they are dressed like a king. And then the artistic director thought it was the idea to shift it, it was the moment to shift it into more as a magician, coming from the east with all these things and the relation with the water, the fire, and the earth, and whatever. And the scandal of the change of actually the dresses of these 3 guys, you cannot imagine. And from there to the law of memory that is implemented, you know, like against the remains of the Franco regime, to some other problems. So this was a battle, like, incredible one. That when we lost, and I spoke with another communist, and we said, I feel bad, but because we stood for this and we lost this battle, and we really lost it. She said, Anna, we lost it all, because actually there haven't been so many attempts to do such movement into culture. Because maybe some other people were wiser, and then they thought that the cultural wars are played in the field of culture. So there we tried to diverge with our, you know, like sneakers and the New Balance and another kind of vocabulary and position into a very stratified field of institutional culture, and it was, it was a battle that it was lost. The second thing of the compromise is how do you compromise with the people that have power. In Barcelona, from the beginning, they said that they wanted to remunicipalize the water system. The water company is run by Akbar, which is owned by Suez, which is one of the biggest multinationals, Suez, like the canal in Suez, running the water all around the world. And, but they said, okay, but we want to do it. They start to, you know, take the steps. They were not doing things according to the contract. There were legal breaches that you could use to actually recuperate this contract. In the meanwhile, Suez actually filed 17 court cases for, you know, like any kind of legal department in a city council can paralyze your work. And what the city of Barcelona did is to, well, there was parallel, they implemented this, it's called multiconsulta, which basically is a process where everybody could could propose something to be voted by the city. If they could make proposals, like I want to change the name of this square because it was an esclavist and I want to put the name of this migrant that died in the strait. This true story. I want to build it, but whatever. You can make these proposals, and if they actually reach a certain threshold of support, then goes to the plenary. The plenary approves this as a consultation to the citizenship, and then if there is like a minimum voting, blah, blah, then it gets approved, and the plenary actually implements this. Then the city of Barcelona said, okay, how are we going to transform social movement or social will, these elements, into real power? But we do it through these methods of, we open a consultation, these people gather the signatures, and then we made a voting, and then because the people think that it's better to have public water, and this is a common sense, then we win this, and then when we go to the plenary, the rest of the parties, they are not opposed in Barcelona en Comú. And then you can have all your strategies because you are a nationalist or not, and a populist or not, that how to deal with that. But basically you are opposing the popular will. And that's how you transform social power into political power in front of the real economical power. What happened there, and this is still amazing, is that the coups, which are the radical left independentist party, voted no to this consultation because they said, you don't need a consultation. You are the city council. You can do it yourself. So I think that there are ways. I mean, the effort that either a cultural war or this kind of process takes of a very limited number of bodies that are there in a very kind of difficult environment, we have also, you have to decide what are the battles that you are going to do. No? But there is another aspect to your question that we have suffered and that I don't address it, and I don't know if it's in your question, but I just put it here on the table, which is, there are professionals of this. You come from the social movement, you don't know how to manage this, and there are people that know how this machine works. In the case of Madrid, this is totally bullshit. Honestly, I mean, it's not true. These good managers of the public are rubbish. They are professional incompetents. And I tell you that any of our comrades working in a cooperative can go to this position and do a much better job on management of the public resources than them. I mean, they are also knowledge about procedures, administrative things, how you manage a budget, but this you can learn in no time. It's not true. It's basically not true. And this, I'm not going to buy it. At the level that I'm seeing in the city of Madrid with the people that I've seen, if you're going to run the Ministry of Economy of, the fourth economy in the European Union, I am not saying, but at local level, there's no way. No way at all. Then we have another problem that maybe is going there underneath, which is the question of power and how power transforms you and how the relation of power and the responsibility changes people as well, and that is true. And my take on that is that we haven't developed the tools to deal with it, not in personal levels and not in collective levels. I don't know if that was your question, more or less, but
yeah, I'm thinking about the identity of the people that move and how do you say and support this kind of movements. So I'm thinking about the change, because in the beginning, maybe in the commons, there was like no any fixed identity, you know? There are no age, there are no ideology, so anyone to right to left can go to the street and say like, go to the indignados, to the acampadas, and now it looks like the right and the conservative and the nationalist parties are taking profit of this. I don't know if I...
There is an hypothesis in this question.
Yeah, there is a hypothesis.
So if you tell the hypothesis, maybe we can discuss what I think about the hypothesis.
No.
No.
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's, because in the indignados have a lot of...
Yeah, well, the Indignados was a political movement. So anybody from any political party could join, and the PA, for example, still is a partisan. So they don't endorse a party. They push forward a program. They say these are our 5 demands of the anti-eviction movement, and any party that accepts to take these 5 demands, we will support this party. So it's a partisan. And the May 15 was totally a partisan. So we become a party. The beauty of the platforms is that we can say that we are not a party. So you can say, no, we are a movement and we are there in the government, but we are not a party. I mean, Ahora Madrid is really not a party, and it's not a very desirable situation, if I have to be honest, because you need organizations. And in the moment that you need organizations, you need a narrative that makes sense of your organization. And in the moment that you make narratives, well, most of our narratives tend to go to the left, and then you become a leftist party. It has advantages. People know how to relate with leftism, and it has disadvantages, which is that it closes to certain kind of things. Madrid, at least, because the way that also the mayor is, Manuela Carmena, and because it's very broad, it managed to be in this broad aspect of progressive politics. And because it's really not a party, it depends on the capacity of people to actually separate it from Podemos. Then again, Podemos has these two tendencies, one which is more populist, traditionally represented by Íñigo Errejón, and more like based on this idea of making communication that is more generalist. Now they are heavily working on this idea of the nation, which for me is a little bit alien to my political tradition. And then we have this other part, which is lately has been represented more by Pablo Iglesias, which are taking more and more a leftist discourse and leftist issues, more or less. There is another declination to your question, which I don't know if it's in your question, but it has been discussed in Spain lately, and I think that in other parts, which is how the identity politics be in the left. But they don't speak about the left, but more they speak about all the movements. I think that especially the feminist movement, that actually is affecting and are losing some kind of popular base, because then the popular class don't feel represented by these new politics that are identity politics, and then they are turning into the right because these new politics that are not the leftist politics that are supporting the social, the working class, they don't feel represented like that. Demoscopically is not true. I mean, the far left is voted in the richest neighborhoods of Madrid, and not precisely by the migrants that work in those houses. So basically, it's, I think that the argument doesn't stand. It doesn't stand statistically, and it doesn't stand politically in any way, in my opinion. And I think it's actually the source of it is a very specific kind of discourse that is very male-based, and that are terribly afraid that they are losing the attention and they are not the center of the world anymore in the political discourse, and they feel threatened themselves, and they project it into a political theory. I just read a paper that is saying fuck nuance, so I'm trying to be a little bit more bold in my statements, as you can see.
How do you understand the process of feminization of politics, and also how, I mean, do you see that as some kind of additional self-reflection of movements, municipalist movements, or the way for them to influence more the broader political arena? What does that, I don't want to use the term phrase, but what does this feminization of politics mean for you?
Well, if we didn't win the elections, like people won the elections, we haven't organized a feminist movement. It's not our doing. If the feminist movement is this incredible force in Spain right now, we have been along the way of something that is bigger than us, that's for sure. It's true that the feminization of politics is one of these lines of governmentality. For me, ecology is not yet there, but it has to be implemented. Feminism is full, and the commons is halfway. So, but feminism, ecology, and the commons are like the three main movements and vectors and pillars of the municipalism. Feminization of politics for us means changing the way the politics are done. This is, it's banal in itself, but it has very concrete situation, and actually comes from the opposite process, which is we saw the masculinization of politics. The May 15 established certain conditions of dialogue and of debate and of decision making that was based on consensus, on the construction of a common sense, of the horizontal structures, in a way that it just imposes something else. When in Madrid the camp was lifted finally, it took 3 assemblies of 8 hours each assembly, but people were discussing why lifting the camp was good, this was the limit of it, the energies were not there, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, in the last votation, someone blocked it, and then it's like, okay, there is no consensus, we start tomorrow. This, for example, changing of speed could be is part, not per se, but is one of the parts of the feminization. Of course, more, like very basic things like the lists are always 50-50, but also like who is talking and how long, what are the spaces for other parts of your life to actually thrive, what are, like how do you put all these things in specific policies. For example, the policies around gender issues and around violence against women are totally in the agenda with incredible power. But more importantly, what we saw, and we were in this political space that actually everybody started to speak in feminine, even when there were men with birds speaking about people. They would say, "Nosotras estamos pensando." The voice is very strong, like it was. You could feel it. It's like this thing that they sound banal because sometimes it's banal, but it's like you feel it. You are there and you say, this is more feminist than it was before. And when we start in Madrid, in the case of Madrid, we started to discuss and we started to negotiate with Podemos, which is a proper state center party. And we are talking about positions and numbers and elections and primaries and who is voting and how are we doing the program. The same collective, with the same people, in the same positions, with the same set of rules, got masculinized. And getting masculinized meant like the priorities of your political action and the people and the bodies that actually could take these priorities forward were then men. And this happened to all of us. And then we were just meeting each other in the street, and then we said, like, guys, we have to meet, we have to talk about this. What has happened? What happened, this thing? What happened? And what happened is that power and institutional power is incredibly masculinized. Incredibly. On all these procedures of what is that you are giving relevance? What is that you are giving voice? From where are you looking at things? It's totally a male-based point of view. So it's not only that you have to control and then the people should speak 2 minutes, and then if a woman raises their hands, even if it's 5 men before, then you give, the word to this woman. It's also what are this priority, how do you deal with the conflicts, and all that have many different declinations. So for me, it's basic. It's also a big jump. I mean, as I said, it's all a process. I mean, the May 15 was wonderful, but the feminist movement hung a banner saying the revolution will be feminist or it won't be, and people wanted to take it down because they thought it was too political. This was the situation in 2011. The situation 2018 is that the feminist movement has called for a care strike the last year. So they called for 24 hours of strike. That was student, work, consume, and care strike. And it was so incredible that this city councillor in a small city in the middle of Spain, he made some declarations to a newspaper, asked about this strike, and then he goes and said, like, wait, no, listen, women, they cannot go on a strike, because if they go on a strike, who is going to take care of kids and the elderly people? I was like, you got it. It's amazing. Like, this guy has understood what is a care strike. Precisely. Women are taking care of children and elderly people. This is how it works. It was amazing. But it was not there from the beginning. It was built. Okay, it's my movement. I like municipalism, so I like to think that we have contributed somehow. Because politics is performative, I think that also the fact that the 2 mayors of the 2 main cities and figures of the municipalities are women, they very often also do things or try to articulate a discourse with Mónica Oltra, which is from Compromís, but she's the president of the region of Valencia. And the fact that there are just women everywhere in the public sphere, because the city councilors, half of them are women taking up all kind of issues, it's part of this wave. But to me, again, this has created a new common sense, for good and for bad. I mean, Patricia Botín, which is one of the major bankers in Spain, also declares herself a feminist. And even Ciudadanos, which is the neoliberal party, said that they would be very happy to, take the leadership of this new movement that is there, it is not theirs. But yeah, I don't know if that was enough. Thank you guys for coming.